This video is sponsored by Motion Array. Okay, so this is the best film simulation recipe for your FUJIFILM X100VI or X100V or pretty much any FUJIFILM camera that allows film recipes. And yes, I am biased because I came up with it, but I'm telling you, I don't even shoot in RAW anymore on my FUJIFILM X100VI, and that's a foreign concept to me because before this, I was shooting on Canon. I'm still shooting on Canon professionally. I use the R5C for most of my work, but I only shoot in RAW whenever I shoot on my Canon R5C or any other professional level camera. I don't even have a JPEG backup. It's literally just straight RAW, and I'm going into Lightroom and I'm shooting that with that sort of workflow in mind. So shooting on the FUJIFILM X100VI only in JPEG is a completely new concept to me. I don't have to edit the photos anymore. I literally just transfer them to my phone, upload them onto Instagram, and I'm pretty much done. Now, I will give a bit of a disclaimer. I've obviously only had the Fuji X100VI for a couple of weeks. I mean, it literally just came out, but in that time, I've been taking it everywhere with me, anywhere possible anyways. And I've been testing out this film simulation recipe almost everywhere, and I think I've got it nailed down, and I'm pretty sure it's never gonna let you down in any scenario, and it hasn't let me down so far. And hopefully this transforms the Fuji X100VI or the X100V into that vintage or cool aesthetic film camera that you've heard all about. Now, real quick before we do get into the film simulation recipe, this video is sponsored by Motion Array, and Motion Array is the absolute best place to get as many titles, effects, generators, plugins, or tools that you want to really take your videos to that next level. And it's so incredibly simple to use. For almost anything, you can literally just click it, drag it, and drop it into your editor, and it starts working instantly. So literally no matter what level of editing you're at, you can use motionarray.com to level up your videos. And for me, it gets even better because you can use unlimited music, which is licensed, meaning that you don't have to worry about any copyright strikes if you're making YouTube videos, as well as sound effects. In fact, every single sound effect or music video file that you've heard in this video, as well as the titles, were all pulled from motionarray.com. Now, some services will make you sign up for the entire year. From a payment perspective, motionarray.com is super flexible. You can pay a monthly subscription, and you can go month to month and pretty much cancel whenever you want if Motion Array doesn't fit your needs anymore. But the best part is that just with that one monthly subscription, you get access to everything. There's no additional or hidden fees or anything like that. You literally have access to Motion Array's entire library of pretty much everything that we've talked about. Also, motionarray.com is completely free to try. All you have to do is head over to the website and you can make a free trial account. Obviously, you won't have access to everything that's available on the website, but it'll give you a really good idea of what motionarray.com brings to the table and how it can take your videos to the next level. Trust me, just go ahead on the website, try it. I 100% guarantee you'll fall in love with it and you'll want to make an account. And when you do, I do have a link in my bio that'll save you $50 when you're signing up. Anyways, huge shout out to my friends at Motion Array for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to the FUJIFILM film recipe. Now real quick, the FUJIFILM X100VI does have the Trans 5 sensor from FUJIFILM. So these film recipes will work on anything that has a Trans 5 sensor. So any other Fuji camera with that sensor. Also Trans 4 will also work. That's what the Fuji X100V was on. Just wanted to throw that out there. All right, so first up we have the image size. Now this should be large no matter what. 3x2 large. This is the largest image that the sensor on this camera is capable of taking, and that's the one you should be using in any scenario just to get the maximum image file size and quality. Cool. Next up we have image quality, and we're going to be doing fine plus raw or just fine. Now fine is basically the highest quality JPEG that the camera is capable of taking, so that's the one you want for maximum quality and maximum information in your images. Now the plus raw is really optional. For me personally, I do like to have the raw file just in case I want to head in there and edit it in Lightroom for whatever reason, although I haven't been doing that on this camera, or for archival purposes, you always want to keep the raw file. But if you're just strictly a JPEG shooter and you don't care about the raw file and you want to save space on your memory card, feel free to do just fine. For me, I'm doing fine plus raw. Next up, if you are going to have a raw file, I would suggest that you have it at lossless, uncompressed. Basically have the largest raw file size possible with all the information still intact. And again, if you're keeping raw files, this is the one that I suggest. If you're not, don't worry about the setting and just move on. All right, so now let's get into our actual film recipe. This is where all the magic starts to happen. And for our film simulation, we're going to be using classic chrome. Now, Fujifilm has a description here as soft color, and enhanced shadow contrast for a calm look. Cool, that sounds pretty good to me. All right, so moving on to grain effect, we are going to be turning this on since we're going for that film aesthetic, but don't worry, we're going to be leaving it on weak and small if you're not a fan of grain. And I'm telling you, whenever you post photos to social media from this camera with this effect turned on, you're not going to be able to tell. I've had it turned on for all of my images and I can barely tell unless I really zoom in, but it does give your photos that really nice film undertone aesthetic. You can't quite put your finger on it. You don't know what it is, but the grain is there in the background. All right, so next up we have color chrome effect, and this one is super important for this film simulation. We're gonna be turning this on and we're gonna be putting it on strong. Now this will add a slight punch of saturation, but it'll add a lot of contrast into your midtones whenever you shoot your images underexposed. And that's a really key point of this film simulation recipe. You wanna get used to shooting the images underexposed because again, you're shooting in JPEG, not in RAW. You're not gonna be editing your images later. So it's really important that you nail the image in camera and get all of your exposure right. Trust me, shoot a little bit underexposed and those mid-tone contrast values are really gonna pop whenever you set this to strong. Next up, we have Color Chrome FX Blue, and what this does is that it basically changes your blues to more of a teal. At this point, we're all familiar with teal and orange and that cinematic look, so we're gonna be setting this to weak because we don't want our blues to be too teal, but we do want them to be teal. Personally, I'm not really a fan of the color blue anyways, so this is a welcome change for me and it'll really help all of your skies in your images pop. All right, now moving on to white balance. For me personally, I've left this on auto. I know a lot of film simulation recipes on Fuji Weekly have this set to daylight. I personally just don't like the super orangey look all the time. I want my whites to be white. Now to compensate for this, I have changed the white balance shift a little bit. So I've bumped up the reds to 4 and the blues to -4, and that's basically to compensate for that Color Chrome FX Blue. I don't want the sky to be super teal and unrealistic, so I'm taking away from the blue values and then I'm adding back a little bit of that warmth since I've set my white balance to auto, but I still want my images to have that film aesthetic. So hopefully that makes sense, and the shift is really something that you can play with in your own film simulation recipe to try and edit the colors to sort of get them where you want. But this is what I'm doing right now. I might tweak it later, but I'm pretty happy with where this is right now. Okay, so now let's move on to the tone curve. Since we're already adding a ton of mid-tone contrast with that color chrome effect, I kind of wanted to flatten out the shadows and the highlights. And if you're used to my photography style, you know I like a bit of a flatter and more muted look. So over here, I have both the shadows and the highlights at -2 to sort of lift those black and lower the highlights. Now, if you're not a fan of this and you want this effect to be dialed down a little bit, you can change this to -1. I've been playing around with both and I've been going back and forth. I've sort of settled on the -2 for now, but if you want to go ahead and change it to -1, I think that would be perfectly okay as well. Next up, we have color. I have this at +2 to sort of give a pop of saturation in those non-warm colors since we have shifted our white balance a little bit. I found this works really well for greens and plants. I feel like the color just looks awesome. All right, so next up we have sharpness, which is a really popular category for a lot of people, but personally I put this at -2. If you know anything about my photography or my video work, I hate digital sharpness. Regardless of what camera I'm using, whether that's my Canon or a GoPro or a drone, I'm always lowering the sharpness all the way to the bottom. What I always say is that you can't take away digital sharpness. You can always add some later in post, you just can't take it away. So I'm turning the sharpness down to -2. Okay, so next up we have noise reduction, and again, a really popular one, and I think this is consistent for almost every single film recipe that I've seen. Everyone sets it to -4, and the reason for this is at the value of 0, you actually have the camera doing some native noise reduction work in there, and you don't really want the camera ever doing that. You don't want the chance of any plasticky images, so we're gonna move this all the way to -4 just to make sure that the camera is not applying any noise reduction, and as long as you set your exposure, you should be okay in most scenarios. And I found that even the noise that's introduced in the grain still has a really nice film aesthetic, so either way you're winning. And finally, to get that dreamy soft look in your photos, we're going to change the clarity to -2. Now this is a bit of a controversial one because whenever you change your clarity, and I don't know if other people also have this problem, whenever you take a photo you get this storing animation, and this doesn't really go away unless you set it to 0, which is kind of annoying, but -2 is the only way to sort of get that nice dreamy soft glow look. Now there is another workaround, and one that I plan on using, and at which point I will change my clarity back to 0, and that's putting some sort of mist filter on this camera. Now I do have my Short Stash and Polar Pro collaboration everyday filter on the way, or I'm waiting for it to restock. I was out of the country when they came out, so I didn't get my request in on time, but once I do get that filter in, I'm going to be changing the clarity to 0 and be popping that filter on. So if you do have any kind of mist filter like the Cinebloom ones from Moment or anything like that, you can pop that on and leave the clarity at 0. If you plan on not using a filter, I would go with -2. Just keep in mind that it's going to slow down your shooting a little bit because of that storing animation that comes up. And that's it. Those are all of my settings for the highly requested Fujifilm X100VI Recipe. Again, this is going to work on a bunch of different Fuji cameras, and it's super versatile. Again, has never let me down. I want you guys to give it a try. Let me know what you think, and if you really love it and you want to show some support and some love, save this as Airbazu's Fuji recipe inside of your camera. That would mean a ton of me. That would mean a ton to me. Take a picture, post it on your Instagram story, tag me, I will reply. That's it for this video though. I'll see you guys in the next one. Until then, keep creating.